His breath caught in his throat as he leaned closer. The jungle air was thick, but it wasn't just the humidity making it hard to breathe, it was the tension. He'd never seen anything like it. Before we continue, please take some time to subscribe to Dailydose, like, and share this video. A creature so massive, so grotesque, it looked almost mythical. The snake was lying there across the half-finished dirt road, motionless, except for the slow, labored rise and fall of its massive body. But what really had everyone frozen in place was the bulge. A terrifying, unnatural bulge that stretched the snake's belly to near bursting. It was grotesque, too large, too perfectly shaped. And when the truth was finally revealed, people screamed. Some ran away. One man threw up in the bushes. Just hours earlier, everything had been normal. In the dense heart of the Brazilian Amazon, a team of construction workers had been pushing through yet another grueling day, paving a road deep into one of the most remote and biologically rich regions on Earth. The job wasn't for the faint of heart. For months now, they'd been living like modern-day explorers, sleeping in tents, cooking over fires, brushing away venomous insects before breakfast. They were used to wild sounds in the night, used to eyes watching them from the trees, but nothing could have prepared them for this. The project they were working on was part of a larger government initiative to open up the Amazon for better infrastructure. On paper, it sounded simple. Lay roads, connect remote regions, and bring development to the jungle. In reality, it was an endless challenge-flooded paths, vanishing materials, lost trucks, aggressive wildlife. But this was something else entirely. That morning, they had been behind schedule. The pressure was on. If they didn't make up time, they'd lose bonuses, maybe even the whole contract. So they pushed forward, some of the men walking ahead with machetes, clearing vegetation, while others prepped the trucks for laying asphalt. And then it happened. Screams echoed from up ahead, urgent, panicked, filled with that unmistakable tone that told everyone something had gone horribly wrong. The men in the rear dropped their tools and ran. What they found brought them to a dead stop. Lying there, stretched across the road like a living nightmare, was the biggest snake any of them had ever seen. Not just big, colossal. Its body looked like it could coil around a small house. One end was still hidden in the undergrowth. The other, its massive head, was rising and falling in shallow, almost lifeless breaths. It was clearly in distress. But that wasn't the worst part. Midway along its enormous body was a bulge, a massive, round, unnatural distortion of its torso nearly twice the width of the rest of its body. Something was inside it. Something big. The workers stared in horror. Was it an animal? A boar? A jaguar? Something larger? One man whispered, "You think it ate a person?" No one responded. They backed away slowly, not sure if the creature was dead, dying, or about to lash out. One of them reached for his phone and called the local police, demanding to be connected with the nearest vet. On the other end of the call, Dr. Renato, the town's veterinarian, initially thought it was a prank. A giant snake stuck on a jungle road with something inside it, but the panic in the caller's voice said otherwise. Within minutes, he packed his gear, hopped into his old truck, and began the long journey into the jungle. While they waited for the vet to arrive, the workers kept their distance. But then the snake stirred. Its tongue flicked, its head lifted, and suddenly it lunged, striking toward one of the men. Cows erupted. The workers scrambled backward, barely avoiding its snapping jaws. The man who was targeted tripped and fell, scraping his arm on the gravel, but managed to escape. The snake collapsed again, weak but still very much alive. Now, it wasn't just a question of curiosity, it was a matter of safety. When Dr. Renato arrived and stepped out of his truck, the scene stopped him in his tracks. The snake was even bigger than he imagined. At first glance, it looked almost dead, but the warnings from the workers told him otherwise. He grabbed his tranquilizer kit and approached slowly, careful not to startle the creature. With two men distracting it from a distance using sticks and noise, Renato managed to get close enough to inject the tranquilizer into the thick muscle near the snake's head. Within minutes, the snake's breathing slowed. Its movement ceased. The vet turned toward the bulge. There was only one way to find out what it had swallowed. With gloves on and a sterilized blade in hand, Dr. Renato began to cut. The tension in the air was unbearable. The sound of the blade slicing through the scaly skin made some of the men wince. Then came the smell-a-rancid wave of rotting meat and bile that hit like a punch in the face. Several workers gagged. One bolted into the trees and vomited, but Dr. Renato kept going. And finally, he saw it, the unmistakable shape of a large, bright red cooler. A cooler? He and the others stared in disbelief. Carefully, he pulled it free. The hard plastic box was still intact, though badly scratched and partially melted by stomach acid. The top was half open. Inside were chunks of meat, pork, beef, chicken, some still wrapped, others not. It had been the workers' food storage for the week. One piece of meat, it turned out, had gone bad the day before. Instead of burying it, one of the workers had lazily left it outside, right on top of the cooler. The stench must have drawn the snake in. Thinking it had found a massive, easy meal, it devoured the entire cooler in one gulp. That decision had almost killed it. Now, with the cooler removed and the incision stitched, the snake was sedated and breathing easier, but it couldn't be left there. It was far too large, too sick, and far too dangerous. So the team called in a truck with a flatbed and carefully using ropes, pulleys, and a winch lifted the snake's limp body onto it. The vet made a few more calls. A museum in the nearest city had long been trying to secure a specimen of the Amazon's largest reptiles. They were willing to take the snake, study it, and preserve it if needed. The incident quickly became the talk of the region. The workers returned to their job, shaken but unharmed. And Dr. Renato, the man who'd spent most of his career treating cows and chickens, had just experienced the most extraordinary and most terrifying moment of his professional life. The construction company awarded him a generous bonus, thanking him for keeping their team safe. He retired the very next day. As news of the incident spread, it wasn't just the construction crew who couldn't stop talking. Word made it to nearby villages, then to city newsrooms. By the end of the week, the story had gone viral online. Articles appeared with headlines like "Monster Snake Blocks Amazon Road" and "Vet Discovers Horrifying Truth Inside Giant Serpent." Social media erupted with speculation. Some thought it was fake. Others were convinced the creature was an undiscovered species. But for the people who had stood there in person, staring at the bulging, struggling mass of muscle and scales, there was nothing fake about it. The image was burned into their minds. The slow rise and fall of its chest, the glazed-over eyes the moment it lunged, the gory reveal. No one would forget it. As for Dr. Renato, the humble vet found himself swept up in a whirlwind of interviews, appearances, and attention he never asked for. One moment he was checking cattle for infections and treating village dogs for fleas. The next he was being called the Amazon Snake Whisperer by Brazilian morning talk shows. A university even offered to fly him out to give a talk about reptilian digestive behavior. He politely declined. He wasn't trying to become famous. He was just glad it was over. But the aftermath wasn't quite so simple. A few days after the incident, officials from the Environmental Protection Agency showed up at the construction site. They claimed the workers had interfered with a protected species and violated ecological preservation laws. Technically, it wasn't true Eno-1 had harmed the snake. In fact, they'd saved it. But the officials weren't really after justice, they were after control. The Amazon was, after all, a battleground of interests. Environmentalists, corporations, government, and locals, all fighting for space, resources, and influence. The construction company pushed back, citing the vet's medical necessity and the danger to the crew. They had footage, photos, and witness testimony. In the end, no one was fined, but the message was clear. What happened that day had attracted attention from people in high places. And there was another problem. The snake was gone. The museum had received the specimen, kept it under sedation for 24 hours, then attempted to move it into a larger enclosure for long-term care. But the snake never made it inside. Somewhere between transfer and setup, it vanished. The museum's official statement claimed an enclosure malfunction, but many found that hard to believe. How does a 25-foot, 300-pound snake just disappear? Rumors began circulating. Some said it had escaped into the city. Others claimed it was stolen, taken by poachers or even a secret government agency. A conspiracy theory popped up online, arguing that the cooler the snake swallowed contained more than just meat, that perhaps, unknowingly, the construction crew had brought something into the jungle that wasn't meant to be found. Of course, most people rolled their eyes at that idea. But one of the workers, Mateus, the one who had nearly been bitten later, claimed that when he inspected the cooler after it was removed from the snake's body, something else had fallen out. A sealed tin box. Heavy, metallic, no label. When he tried to show it to the others, it was gone. No one believed him. They were too shaken, too eager to move on. But Dr. Renato remembered. He'd seen something glinting in the blood-soaked mess that wasn't plastic or meat. He didn't speak about it in interviews. He didn't write about it in reports. But that image just a flash haunted him. A week after the event, Dr. Renato handed in his resignation papers. The construction company paid out his reward and even offered him a consulting job. He turned them down. He moved to a small town near the coast, far from the jungle. He never spoke of the snake again. The construction site resumed work a month later. A new vet was assigned, new workers were brought in, and the road was eventually completed. but none of them could forget the day the jungle fought back. A quiet warning, buried in scales and silence. The Amazon is ancient, it is alive, and sometimes when pushed too far, it doesn't just whisper, it roars.